Hey, let's talk about something good. Let's talk about some good news, some exciting technology news. I've been holding on to this story for a few days now, ever since I discovered this interesting company or this group called Outernet. Mark, have you heard about this yet? Outernet?
I've only heard what you've said about it.
I haven't said anything about it on the air. No. It's according to the story here over at Fast Company, FastCoLabs.com is their site. In 2013, when Typhoon Haiyan brought down most of the Philippines' cell phone and radio towers, bringing information to a standstill at a crucial moment. The same thing happened again earlier this month in Ukraine. I don't know when this was written, by the way. But at this time, it was men with political motives, not nature, probably a few months ago. Not nature, that severed access to the country's largest internet service provider. A fledgling system of low Earth orbit satellites known as the Outernet might mean an end to information outages like this. Let's talk about how they're planning on doing that here in moments. It's Free Talk Live. Actually, you have some pretty exciting technical news here that we're going to share about helping people all around the globe who don't have access to the internet get information in a way that has heretofore been impossible. I'm pretty excited about it. It's called Outernet. Their website is outernet.is. We'll continue that discussion here, or we'll kind of actually get into it. We just barely scratched the surface in the last segment. As we continue here, the story from Fast Company about Outernet. Outernet.is is their website. It's a proposal to provide access sort of to the internet to 4 billion people around the world, to all the people who do not have internet access. I was shocked when I saw that number because here, we're living in an urban area. There's plenty of internet available where you and I are, Mark, and it's easy to take for granted that, other people must have this access too. Turns out they don't have it.
Yeah, their problem's clean water.
Yeah, it may come as a shock to anyone reading this article, but as pervasive as the internet is in 2014, 2/3 of the world still does not and has never had access to it. That's almost 4 billion people who don't enjoy the same access to the open and free information that you and I do. That 60% doesn't even cover when man or nature steps in to take the infrastructure out. We're just talking about people living in places too remote, too costly, or too poverty-stricken to make it worthwhile to set up internet infrastructure. But more and more, access to information seems like a basic human right. Now, I don't agree with that particular perspective, but I understand why people feel that way. Right up there with access to clean water. And
everything I've gotten used to is a human right.
And that's exactly the attitude of Syed Karim, the creator of Outernet, a free, universally accessible information service that beams internet information, be it entire websites like Wikipedia, emergency broadcast messages, or video classes from the Khan Academy, to any Wi-Fi-enabled device across the globe. We fundamentally believe that in order for our species to advance, for humanity to get to the next step of development, that no one can be denied a certain level of education and information. If there's a curiosity, it should be satiated. And that's a fine belief to have. And this man is moving to do it on his own. He's not asking to force people into paying for his program. He's come up with an idea, and he's moved ahead with it, and he's found supporters. And it is, as Fast Company points out, an ambitious project. Using open source hardware and software, Karim and his team will launch hundreds of nano satellites into low Earth orbit in 2016. These satellites will encircle the planet, delivering packets of information, much in the way BitTorrent does now, to anyone on the globe as long as they have a Wi-Fi enabled device. Now, that statement is different from my understanding of this particular program and how it works. I don't know about these little low Earth satellites, the hundreds of them. What I know is that, and maybe the plan, maybe this journalist didn't really understand what the plan was, but my understanding, at least in its current iteration, is what they're doing is they're renting time on free-to-air satellite systems. Just like we are, Mark. You and I have, I've got a LRN.FM. It's my little internet network, and I put it on free-to-air satellite.
Well, the reason they want to put their own satellites up is so they're not beholden to anyone.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And they are little tiny boxes that float up in the sky, and they would have more control, and they'd be able to cover more stuff.
Well, right now they're not doing that part of it. They do have their signal up, though. They've actually got the signal up. It's operational, so this isn't just pie in the sky. I don't know if that wasn't intended. It wasn't intended as a pun, but this is happening. This is real. It's not just an idea. Anyway, he says, I've been thinking about this problem for almost 7 years. I started actively working on it about 4 years ago. And he originally enrolled in graduate school, et cetera, et cetera. But only after he left graduate school and began working for Chicago Public Radio, this idea fully took shape. And he was asked to head a product development at Chicago Public Radio, where he began exploring data casting in more detail. It's data casting that lies at the heart of the Outernet, and it's also why his solution is so much less expensive and easier to deploy than other global internet networks like Facebook's Internet.org and Google's Project Loon. Now, I have to admit, I don't know anything about those other two projects. So I'm interested in learning about those as well.
It's like drug dealers that give you the first one free.
Outernet is a one-way platform, and this is one of the ways it's different. It will broadcast free data to any Wi-Fi device on the planet, but will not at first allow those receiving the broadcasts to broadcast back. So essentially what they're doing is they're selecting a library of content.
Yeah.
They're sort of curating the internet, so to speak. Okay, Wikipedia, that's a no-brainer, right?
Let's that's the one.
Put Wikipedia up there and other informational stuff. And
porn. Lots of porn.
I don't think you're going to get that, Mark.
No, that would be good.
No, the bandwidth is very limited on Outernet. They're paying for bandwidth to up on Galaxy 19 satellite across North and Central America.
I just heard that the internet was for porn, so I assumed that would be what it would be about.
They're also up on Hotbird across Europe and in the Middle East. So they've covered already quite a bit of the globe just getting on those two satellites. So anyone with a free-to-air receiving dish and the right equipment can do this. They can receive this signal, and they can then broadcast that signal out via Wi-Fi. So sort of the example is that, some village out in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure whatsoever, but except for a generator to, make power, can have internet now, essentially. They can have this one-way internet, which would deliver all kinds of information, which heretofore has been impossible to deliver to these places.
It's really great that some kids out in, some remote village can, when they turn on the generator or the 1 hour a day, the school can use it to get Wikipedia.
Our initial focus is on solving a very specific problem, the lack of access to a basic level of information and education for all of humanity. He says Outernet's not the internet. It's simply the fastest and least expensive way to deliver rich content to the large fraction of humanity who cannot afford the information that many of us take for granted. Once that's addressed, we'll work on the more complicated and significantly more expensive task of providing low-cost, two-way internet access. But that one-way information is nothing to scoff at. For the first time ever, an additional 4 billion people would be able to receive, download, and store data locally on any Wi-Fi device. Now, just to be clear, you don't just get to carry around a Wi-Fi device and receive Wikipedia on it with Outernet. You have to have a satellite dish, receive the signal first, then hook into a Wi-Fi router or something that can then create an access point that anyone with a Wi-Fi device can access. Yeah. So the humanitarian and political implications of this are huge. And in a natural disaster scenario like Philippine Typhoon, Outernet could have easily broadcast entire websites full of medical and rescue advice to victims across the country. In Ukraine, it could have enabled those in the resistance movement to share up-to-date information from one Wi-Fi device to the next, no matter if Russian sympathizers took down all of the country's internet service providers. So I have to say, I'm pretty excited about this. The Fast Company article gets into more details about it. I've actually reached out to Outernet, and they're looking for content partners. So, of course, I thought, well, gosh, we can provide content. We do that pretty good here at Free Talk Live. We, do a show 7 nights a week, and they can put out there whatever they want to put out there. So maybe they'd be interested. I don't know. The pitch that I sent, the guy that responded said he was interested. He wanted to talk, and so we'll see what happens. I think it'll be pretty cool.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.